Chris, they say music is a universal language that makes the world go round. Everyone can speak it, everyone can hear it. It is something that transcends human speech. And we have on a premier film composer. He is film Will and Harper is premiering at the Sundance Film Festival, and his resume above that is phenomenal.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you guys.
Thank you, my friend. What you do is nothing short of phenomenal. I am a huge fan of music. I was a musician as a young child, nowhere near the status of what you do, but I have to say I am a fan of everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much.
What brought you into this world of music? We talk about living our dreams.
Yeah.
What made a young Nathan say, I want to dedicate my life, my passion to music?
Well, I grew up around a lot of music. My father was a folk performer in New York City in the 1960s. I started playing guitar when I was about 10 years old, and immediately started writing music.
Sure.
I was not that taken with, lessons and practicing and stuff like that, but I always wanted to create my own work kind of immediately. And then, the relationship between music and film sort of happened in parallel for me. So I was writing, recording music, playing in bands in New York City, touring. And at the same time, I spent a lot of time with film, going to the cinema in New York, to our sort of great repertory cinema that we have in New York City, Film Forum, Anthology Film Archives, as a source of inspiration. I wasn't even really thinking about film music really at that time. But in fact, I always took a lot of inspiration for my own music and compositions and songs from watching films. I remember being a teenager, watching Rosemary's Baby at home and staying up all night writing pieces that were just sort of inspired by my feelings from having that experience. So later on, when I wound up sort of putting these things together, when some editors asked me for some music for some people who were familiar with other work of mine. And suddenly, like, these things sort of snapped into place.
Yeah.
And my sort of love of cinema, which had always inspired my music so much, and my work as a musician and a performer certainly kind of came together. And it happened very quickly. But my friends had joked that always seemed very obvious, but again, it occurred to me kind of later on.
That's when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That musical journey is fantastic. To have the fact that you have supportive parents that are bringing you into this world. So you have so many people in the arts that are coming from different backgrounds. The fact that you were propelled into it like that, that's what a life, what a way to grow up, to be in the arts.
That's true. And, following these things is tricky. So I spent a lot of time doing political work. I have many sort of different interests, and I always sort of, you're sort of torn between all the different things that you love. And so something that I love about this particular work, doing these film scores like we have here when I get these commissions, is it brings together a number of different things that I love. So like making music, dramatic stuff, also dealing with, as in many of the documentary films, you're dealing with social issues, you're dealing with literature, you're dealing with psychology. It's funny, I was also raised around a lot of therapists and psychoanalysts, and I actually think that my approach to film scoring is often a very psychological one. And I am often thinking about, Freud and sort of deep desires and, the unconscious. So there's something about this kind of work that brings together many things that I've always kind of loved and been compelled by.
So you could pull on those heartstrings, all that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right.
It's so great where you're pulling inspiration from.
Yeah.
Now, right now, this is not your first rodeo here at Sundance. I mean, you are very well accomplished. You have Will and Harper going on right now. I'd love to hear a little bit about that film and your other experiences at Sundance.
Yeah. Well, we're very excited about Will and Harper. It's a really beautiful film, and it's a documentary film that tells the story of, Will Ferrell, wonderful comedian and actor, and his friend who, during COVID, they go way back. It was his writing partner, the person who really championed him as a performer. They'd sort of had their whole lives together. His friend contacts him and tells him that he has transitioned and is transitioning.
Yes.
And, they've not actually seen each other in person, and they're going to have this experience where they decide they're going to go on a road trip together. and sort of use this as a way to sort of explore Harper, the friend's journey, and sort of the journey of the development of their friendship and their relationship. So it's a very beautiful, moving, touching film, but which is also very gentle and very kind of delicate with its subjects and with the audience. And I think people are really going to connect with it and really love it. And it speaks to, both the specifics of this particular story, but there are also many kind of universal aspects that it has in so many ways. And I think it'll be really moving for people. And then, musically, we really connected with, the kind of is in the score. Yeah. A lot of the role of the music was to sort of be inspired by this feeling of a very delicate internal feeling of becoming and of growth and of friendship and of sort of hope and resilience in the face of some really difficult emotional feelings. And that was something I feel we were able to do really nicely. And we're just really very proud of the whole experience. Incredible director, Josh Greenbaum. It was a really, really lovely film.
I mean, to be trusted with this story, music is going to bring so much to this, and this is obviously something very personal.
Yeah.
To Will and his friend Harper, this is huge. And to be trusted with this, how does it feel as a composer to be looked at, to be commissioned to come on a film like this for such a personal piece?
It's very important to me. It means a lot to me. I take it very seriously. And, we were talking about sort of psychology before. I think one of the things that I think about a lot when I'm doing film scores that I really focus in on is being authentic to the emotional point of view of the character and the protagonist that I'm dealing with. Be it, in a nonfiction film like this or in a fiction film. It doesn't matter. Either way, being sort of truthful to that inner experience, not getting ahead of it, not having the music feeling like it's an external commentary or like it's the sweaty hand of the composer or the director. No. Because as a viewer, I think most people, even if they're not aware of it, when you feel that a meaning is being imposed from the outside in the music, it annoys you and it takes you out of the experience and you don't trust the movie. And I think it's very important to be very kind of sensitive to that feeling and then have that inform from the unconscious the creation of the music and staying really true to that. And, again, our director, Josh, was really helpful in kind of talking about these ideas and talking this through with me. And that was sort of a thing there. And I would say that principle has been, pertinent for many of the films that I've scored, including some recent Sundance films. So a couple of years ago, we had Emily the Criminal with Aubrey Plaza was one. Similarly, this is a character with a lot of anger, a lot of tough feeling for the situation that she's been dealing with in her life. And that 100% informs the vibe of the score. No. There's the tension of sort of the criminal aspect, but it's really about how she feels, her anger, her tension, her sort of, resentment at what she's dealing with. And also at the same time, in other moments of the music, her hopes for what might be another, a better life and a better world for her.
Oh, yeah.
Another film we had that same year was called Watcher, directed by the great Chloe Okuno. And this is a suspense thriller starring Micah Monroe, living in Eastern Europe for the first time, convinced that maybe her neighbor across the street is stalking her and might be a murderer. And nobody believes her. And you don't know throughout the movie if she's right or not.
Yeah.
You'd have no idea. But the music is going to speak to how she's feeling inside. And is going to speak to her feel and speak to her emotional state. And so, in a sense, all these, recent Sundance films, which are so disparate in so many ways, plot-wise, still are unified in approach for me musically by being sort of true to the emotional state of the characters. And also, I think the other thing that I think about a lot is just like, and this is a little more touchy-feely, just like the vibe. Yeah, just the overall aesthetic experience of the world that we're in. Because that's one of the things that music can really do for a film is just define this sense of place, this vibe, the experience of stepping into the film. Because yes, there's character and yes, there's story, but when we experience a film, it's beyond just like if your buddy tells you a story of like, so this happened to me on a Tuesday. It's not just that, it's the whole affect of it. It's the feeling. And I think music is, a really special part of that.
Talking about exciting projects that are going on, Camp Courage, Netflix, Oscar shortlist. This is fantastic. We need to hear more about this.
Yeah. Camp Courage is a very inspiring, very beautiful film. Painful, but ultimately incredibly hopeful. It deals with a young girl and her grandmother who are refugees of war in Ukraine. And the girl has lost her mother. She's being raised by her grandmother. Directed by Max Lowe. And they go to a camp known as Camp Courage, run by the Mountain Seed Foundation, which basically helps child survivors of war in dealing with trauma and in sort of rebuilding their own emotions and psychologies using the technique of courage through mountain climbing.
Oh, wow.
Founded and run by psychiatrists and also by American combat war veterans who were dealing with their own trauma. A character in this movie is an incredible guy. It's a really very inspiring movie that we need very much now, I think, in this time. I did the score with my old friend Chris Ruggiero, who I collaborate with a lot. I also wrote a song for the film, which plays in the end credits, which has gotten a lot of love that we're very happy about. And yeah, I would love for people to see the film. And it's a really, really special movie.
It sounds like something that's going to really have an impact and change people's lives moving forward.
I hope so, yeah. And I think it's interesting. There's, even just as a parent, I think there's a lot to learn, really, for anybody.
Sure.
About children and parenting. But then especially in the, in the larger sense, for children of war, survivors of trauma. There's really quite a lot to get from it. Max Lowe is the great director. Netflix, definitely wonderful to see. Do check it out.
Everybody, please check this out. These are movies that are going to make an impact. These are the stories that need to be told. And again, because of your phenomenal music, it's going to make all the difference, really.
We know right away when you're listening, when you're editing the film, without the sound, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near the same. That full, like a full orchestra needs to be there.
Yeah, that's right.
No,
Absolutely right.
100%. Now, I love your approach to composing. What you're doing is you're looking at the emotion of the film, the characters, and you're almost getting out of the way to actually be in the forefront. For young composers that are starting, it is always difficult when you're new in a business to put your ego to the side, to say, maybe I have to put the film first over my own aspirations. And any advice you would give these young up-and-coming composers to kind of step out of the way of their ego and kind of listen to the film first?
Well, it's tough because, of course, your ego is also important.
Yes.
And the directors, the people who are commissioning you, they love your, if they love your music, like that's why they're going to bring you in. Because they've heard your music and there's something in you that they're going to respond to. So I think it's important that people be true to themselves, find the things sort of within them and find the way to really express that and really be able to define that and sort of develop your own musical voice. And your musical voice also is going to come out whether you want it to or not.
Sure.
And there's scores that I'll do that to me are totally different from one another. And they might be stylistically, sonically, but friends of mine will be like, oh, that's one of those real Halperian chord changes in there. And I won't even have thought of it. I'm not trying to put a signature on it, just like it sort of emerges from within you. And so I do think that's important. I think sometimes people will, if you're being commissioned to score a film, you really want to give it the same, heart and soul as you do for all your own sort of separate compositions that are not for a commission. But I would also say, when I got into scoring films, it wasn't something I even knew was a profession.
Sure.
I mean, I was vaguely aware of it, but it was not something I really thought about. I think for younger people who are sort of aspiring to this, I think that's great, and it's cool that they're ahead of the curve. I really do. But at the same time, just like with anybody in the arts, focusing on your craft is important, but it's also important to experience life and to have your work as, again, for anyone in the arts, not just be informed by the influence of other works that you like, but also like you do need to have some sense of what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
And you do need to read The Economist, and you do need to go out and like have your heart broken and like have weird, bad, beautiful, terrible things happen to you. And, you bring all of that to your work. So I do think it's important to not just be, too enclosed or too overly, careerist or something. I think that's very important. I mean, ambition is important and hustle is important. It has its place. But, really the reason that any of us, I think, are doing something in the arts and in music in the first place is because there's something emotionally that we want to express. And, the greatest blessing of, doing work in the arts is being able to take any feelings that you have, even terrible ones, and sort of, turn them in a sort of alchemical way into something beautiful. And so I think that's very important for everybody. Yeah.
It's like you're a mentor to these people in our audience. Who are your mentors? I'm kind of curious.
Please, thanks. Interesting question. I don't know that I've had mentors in the classic sense, but certainly as far as film work goes, some of the first editors that I worked with, Donna Shepard, who I worked with on Marina Abramovich, The Artist is Present, HBO film, which was my first film here at Sundance, really taught me a tremendous amount just about engaging in the film process. And also was somebody who encouraged the film team. So this was someone who really believed in my music and encouraged the film team to really take a chance on someone who had never scored a film. That's something I'm very grateful for. And I think everybody needs those moments, I think that's something that was very important. I, as a younger person, I also had, I think this is relevant too. I had a sort of, not a literal, but a figurative older brother type figure that when I was a teenager, it turned me on to some of like the really great music, to like the Stooges and the Velvet Underground and the Birthday Party, and to like weird movies and stuff like that. And I think those kinds of figures in your life are really important. And I think a lot of those interests that I got turned on to, as a younger person are still very much with me today.
Oh, that's beautiful. Absolutely. Are you kidding me? You can tell the passion you have for talking about this past life, past in your life. But right now, talking about past, what is future right now for Nathan? What is next? Projects coming up? What is next for you?
A lot of stuff under NDAs that I can't be too specific about. But, in short, a couple of different series. And these are things that, speaking very broadly about, incorporate elements of both very dark, very scary, very tragic, and also arcs of redemption and hope. And I think these kinds of things that have opposition within them in a story, things that are overdetermined in terms of feeling and vibe and ambiance, or that's the stuff I'm most drawn to. So musically, something that's both beautiful and terrible. And then something in which you have, and then in a film score, when you have a relationship between the music and the image in which you have, in which it's overdetermined, in which the image might be saying one thing, but the music is saying something else, and within that is saying something else. These levels of complexity and sort of things that are beautiful and terrible, that to me is like, and tragic and funny.
Sure, yes.
That to me is like, that's what life is all about. That's, for me, like what the arts are all about. And I think these things are things that will honor that sort of vibe and that ethos. I'm excited about that.
This sounds very, very exciting. For those watching, how can we find out more information about you? Social media, places we can look you up, where they can look at your music. Where can our fans find more about Nathan?
Well, my name is Nathan Halpern, and there's Spotify, there's vinyl, There's websites and Instagram and all that stuff is all out there.
It's all out there, everybody. Use the Google. It's easy to use. You can figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. It has been a pleasure having you here. Your passion about music is so transcending. It makes me just want to, like, right now, I want to listen to everything.
I want to be a brilliant.
And you could tell I love it. I love passionate artists. You have that passion. It inspires us. It's going to inspire our viewers. Thank you so much for taking the time. We know you're busy.
So much.
Really. You are inspiring. Thank you so much.
It's
really. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.